Hey everybody, it's time for another Disney Top 10, and today we're going to do the top 10 facts you probably did not know about the Disney company. And the reason I'm doing this episode is because I am sick to death of seeing all these YouTube videos that are top 10 lists of things you probably didn't know about Disney. And A, I know every single one of them, and B, it's all the same list over and over again, and it drives me absolutely crazy. So today I thought we would take a different kind of look at a top 10 list. And this one is kind of a little bit more for Disney fans. So let's go ahead and start it off with number 10. Number 10, the Great Movie Ride was supposed to be an Epcot pavilion, but the people at the top of the company, at that time it was Michael Eisner, thought it would be a great idea for its own park. It was actually going to sit in between the Imagination Pavilion and the Land Pavilion in Future World. Pretty interesting. That is really bizarre because that wouldn't really fit, I don't think, and I'm really kind of glad that we ended up with Disney's Hollywood Studios. Or if you're like me, you still call it MGM Studios. Number 9, the song Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid was almost cut out of the movie. They were doing tests of the movie in the late 80s before it was completely done, and the song was testing poorly. At that time, Jeffrey Katzenberg, who ran the animation department, told them to cut the movie, and some of the people protested and said it wasn't the song, it was other things wrong with the movie, such as pacing and other things. The writer of the song, Howard Ashman, told Jeffrey Katzenberg that he could take Part of Your World out of the movie, quote, over his dead body. Ashman was right. That iconic song is this like the scene that you think of when you think of The Little Mermaid, and I could not imagine that movie without that song in it. Number 8, the Disney company had no faith in The Lion King at the time of production. The people that worked in animation at that time were in a renaissance of animation. They had so much stuff going on. They had 2 projects going on at the same time, which was Pocahontas and The Lion King. Jeffrey Katzenberg convinced everyone that The Lion King was going to be a miss and that the big hit was going to be Pocahontas. The Lion King was made by the, quote, B team at the Disney Studios. Most of the senior animators didn't want to be associated with a failure like The Lion King at that time because it was the company was doing such great things at that time. They didn't want to be involved with the first failure of that era. And so they decided to all work on Pocahontas instead. Isn't that interesting to think that The Lion King was considered to be a flop at that point? It's interesting to think about. Number 6, Disneyland was originally going to be called the Mickey Mouse Park. Now, that wasn't just the actual name of it, but people in the 1940s and early 50s were really big on Disney because there had been nothing like anyone had ever seen up to that point. And people actually wanted to meet Mickey Mouse. But Walt did not want people to be able to freely roam the studio, so he came up with an idea for what he called the Mickey Mouse Park. It was going to be across from the Disney studio lot, and it was going to be on 8 acres of land. Walt kept adding to his idea until eventually it would not be able to fit into the side of the studio. So he then started looking for land for cheap near the studio, and he found Anaheim, and the rest is history. Number 6. Disney did not originally own the Disneyland Hotel when it opened. It also looked a lot different. It looked like a motel lodge. Like one of those weird things you see on the side of like an old dirt road when you're driving down some weird part of the country. It's kind of what it looked like. But the Disneyland Hotel was originally owned by the Rather Corporation. Jack Rather was good friends with Walt Disney, and Walt gave him the rights for not only the Disneyland Hotel, but also gave him rights to use a Disney name for any other hotel that he wanted. The Walt Disney Company ended up buying the Rather Corporation in 1988, and the only reason they did was to get back the name rights, and they could once again own the full rights to the Disneyland Hotel. Number 5. When Disneyland first opened, Frontierland was 33% of the entire park. And that is a lot of space for Frontierland. A lot of why that was such a big area was because of the popularity of Davy Crockett and the Frontier of the 1950s. It was kind of a real big deal. It's just interesting to think that Frontierland was that big because I don't think it's as popular as it is now as it was back then. Number 4, Main Street USA at Disneyland. You used to be able to buy a piano, tobacco, and bras. Yes, the Wizard of Bras was a shop that you used to be able to go into to buy women's delicates at Disneyland. Bizarre. Could you imagine like a Fredericks of Hollywood or a Victoria's Secret being on Main Street, USA today? Yeah, me neither. Number 3, Epcot was originally going to be a city. When Walt died in 1966, he filmed a video that can still be viewed today on YouTube or in the DVD series The Disney Treasures. I like to watch this video a few times a year because it's so interesting to see what could have been and to think about a man who'd pioneered animation going from that into urban planning. Absolutely fascinating. when I say city, I do mean city. I mean, people were going to I'm actually going to do a podcast about this soon on my Daily Disney Blog podcast. You can check that out on iTunes and Stitcher. Shameless plug there. But the film goes into a lot of stuff, such as like the layout of each of the like layers of the city. It's just super interesting. If you've never checked that out, make sure you check that out because it's one of the things you kind of need to see. And it's cool to think about what could have been and how different things are now. Number 2, Tim Burton. Tim Burton worked with the Disney company way before The Nightmare Before Christmas. He actually was a storyboarder and concept artist for such films as Tron, The Fox and the Hound, and The Black Cauldron. And topping out this list, number 1, Beauty and the Beast. This fact is a 2-part one. First off, Walt Disney himself had plans to do a Beauty and the Beast film, but because of World War II, he had to cut back on feature films. This is why we saw shorter films like Dumbo and the package films like Three Caballeros, Melody Time, Make Mine Music, Saludos Amigos, and Ichabod and Mr. Toad. But even more interesting, the company in the late 80s had completed 20 minutes of the movie, but the studio's heads were not happy with the look of it, and they literally scrapped the first 20 minutes of the movie. They changed it to a musical and put Howard Ashman on the job, who died of HIV before the film could be completed. Now, that is a top 10 list. No utilidors, nothing crazy. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Disney Top 10. And please hit like and subscribe and share and all that kind of good stuff. Thank you so much.